Okay, so over the last couple of months, I've done features on how some of the top 10 players have done from the 2024 portal. I did a feature on the top 10 quarterbacks and the top 10 receivers. It seems kind of logical now that I would do the running backs. There were some pretty big names in the 2024 transfer portal at the running back spot, and some of them blew up and had big years, and others were kind of irrelevant. In today's video, we're going to take a look at these top 10 players, see how they did, and what their future could hold. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and take a look at how these top 10 running backs did. So at number 10, we had Jo'quavious Marks, otherwise known as Woody Marks. Coming out of Carver High School in Atlanta, Georgia, Marks ended up having a tremendous high school career. He ended up rushing for 1,500 yards and 23 touchdowns as a senior, and that's why he was a 4-star recruit. He was ultimately listed as the number 11 running back in the country and would originally decide to go over to Mississippi State. Marks played 4 seasons for the Bulldogs, and his best year came in 2022 with 582 yards and 9 touchdowns. He was probably given a high ranking in the portal because he had a lot of production and was a senior, and he decided to go to USC for his final season. USC needed a new running back after they just sent off Marshawn Lloyd to the league, and what did Woody Marks do in his 1 year? Well, he was really solid. He ended up running for 1,133 yards with 9 total touchdowns. Marks became the feature back for the Trojans and is right now considered to be a mid to late round NFL draft pick. It's great how he transferred and had his best season yet and will now play his way into the league. I always love stories like this, and he'll get his own feature here in the coming months on the channel. At number 9, we have running back Kedrick Reescano. He's honestly a guy I did not know much about going into making this video, but I guess he's been seen as a pretty big deal for quite some time. In his high school career, he had over 5,000 all-purpose yards, which included 1,800 yards his senior season. He also had 35 touchdowns that year. He ended up choosing to go to Ole Miss over Michigan State, Oklahoma State, Penn State, and Arkansas, and Reescano was listed as the number 8 back and the 192nd overall player in his recruiting class. The new Canny, Texas product ended up arriving at Ole Miss, but was never really able to see the field much while he was there. I mean, literally, he never saw the field. So he would decide to enter the transfer portal, and he would go to Arizona. Arizona had enjoyed a breakout season in 2023, but under new head coach Brent Brennan, he just was never really able to figure it out this year either. He did end up having 78 carries for 359 yards and a touchdown, but he was more of a reserve back and did not live up to being a top 10 transfer back. I think a lot of that was based on potential, but he should be the starter next season, and he has plenty of potential, but for now, it was sort of seen as a whiff. I've got to admit, probably my favorite running back in the 2024 transfer portal was Dylan Edwards. I've been hearing about Edwards for quite some time, as he kind of had a crazy recruitment where he flipped around a couple of schools, and this came after a tremendous career at Derby High School. He played alongside Avery Johnson, who's one of the most fun quarterbacks in college football in my eyes, and he ended up putting up insane numbers while he was in high school. Over 6,426 yards and 95 touchdowns in his 3-year career, and that made him a 4-star recruit. He was listed as a number 12 back and would decide to go to Colorado for his freshman year. We all know he had a couple of moments where he dazzled with Colorado, but ultimately he did flame out towards the end of it. He only had 321 yards and a touchdown as a freshman, and him and Coach Prime decided to go their separate ways, as Edwards would transfer back closer to home and play with quarterback Avery Johnson and go to Kansas State. Edwards was probably supposed to be the guy, but instead he took second fiddle to DJ Giddens, who blew up into an NFL prospect, and Edwards was just the second guy. He was extremely explosive, but he ended up finishing with 74 carries for 546 yards and 5 touchdowns, while also catching 19 passes for 2 touchdowns out of the air. I wouldn't really call him a bust because when he actually got the ball, he was really good, and he still has plenty of potential, and part of it is just being unlucky because he was stuck behind an All-American level running back almost. One guy who had a very tragic story this past season in the portal was running back Roydell Williams. Coming out of Hueytown High School in Alabama, Roydell was one of the top running back recruits in the nation. This guy ended up having nearly 6,000 rushing yards and 84 touchdowns during his career, which is why he got attention from every school in the nation. Roydell would end up choosing to go to Alabama and became the number 10 running back, a 4-star recruit, and the 116th best player in his high school recruiting class. He would arrive at Alabama in 2020, and he was unfortunately stuck in a logjam of running backs. He never really could quite get going in his first 3 years, having 6 touchdowns and just under 600 yards. In 2023, his role finally expanded, getting over 100 touches for 560 yards and 5 touchdowns. Looking for a better opportunity, and I guess not wanting to play for Kalen DeBoer and the new staff, Roydell would enter the portal, where he would try to take over for the loss of running backs at Florida State. Ultimately, this would end up biting him badly, as Roydell ended up running the ball 26 times for 53 yards. You can do the math. That is 2 yards per carry, which is absolutely putrid. Roydell did have 2 touchdowns and also struggled with injuries, but he ended up becoming a complete bust, missed most of the year, and he picked the wrong school to go to. I think he has 1 more year of eligibility left, so he should be back for the Noles, and there's still time to right the ship. But for now, he's got to be considered one of the bigger busts in this year's transfer portal, and it was an unfortunate story. I actually did a full-length video on him if you want to check that out down below. So at number 6, we ended up having a guy by the name of Jordan Waters. He was a running back coming from Duke, but going back in time, Waters was just a 3-star recruit and actually played receiver. He went to Fairmont High School, located in North Carolina, and was the number 166 wide receiver in his high school recruiting class. This came after a high school career in which he had more than 2,300 yards of total offense and 29 touchdowns. He played quarterback and ran the ball. As I said, he spent the first 5 years of his career at Duke. He had his breakout season in 2022 with 566 yards and 8 touchdowns, and then in 2023, he had 819 yards and 12 scores. For his final season of eligibility, he would transfer across the state to NC State, and in total only ran the ball 95 times for 470 yards and 4 touchdowns. This was semi-disappointing. Waters, I guess, is technically now off to the NFL draft, but I doubt he will get picked. Due to his experience and longevity, though, I assume he'll at least get an undrafted free agent opportunity, and to be honest, he was underwhelming for being the number 6 overall back. Breaking into the top 5, we have to talk about Ja'Quinden Jackson. Oh boy, does he have quite the story, as at one point, he was listed as the number 3 dual-threat quarterback in the country and the 46th overall recruit in the country. This came after a great career while he was at Duncanville High School, as during his high school time, he was one of the top athletes in the state, throwing for 1,700 yards and 21 touchdowns, while also rushing for over 1,000 yards and 16 scores. He was cousins with both former Texas players Calvonte Dixon and Keontae Ingram, so I guess he was destined to end up in Austin. As I said, this guy was a future star quarterback. Unfortunately, Ja'Quinden was never able to get things going there, as he never actually played a snap at Texas and would eventually transfer to Utah. Quickly, he moved on from the quarterback spot, as in 2022, he became a running back. He ran for 531 yards and 9 touchdowns. He became the feature back once again in 2023, this time running for 797 yards and 4 scores. For the 2024 season, he would decide to pack things up and go over to the SEC and test things out. Rocket Sanders had gone to South Carolina, so Ja'Quinden Jackson took over as the starter. He ended up rushing for 790 yards and 15 touchdowns and was off to an incredible start, but I do believe he struggled with injuries towards the end of the season and was not able to be as productive as the season winded down. Ja'Quinden is definitely going to get drafted into the NFL, and he will get his own video. He went from a big-time quarterback to a running back, and you don't really see that too often. Ja'Quinden definitely was not a bust either, and the guy right in front of him was the dude he replaced in Raheim Sanders. This guy was a monster running back coming out of Rockledge High School in the state of Florida, as Sanders was just impossible to stop while he was there. He ended up putting up insane numbers and played pretty much everywhere on the field, as he was a running back, a wide receiver, and a linebacker. He had offers from nearly every school in the country, and as a 4-star player and the number 7 athlete in the nation, he would choose to go to Arkansas. He ended up breaking out his first year in 2021, running for 578 yards and 5 touchdowns. His monster season would come in 2022, as he was near the top of the SEC with 1,443 yards and 10 scores. Sadly, 2023 was a major drop-off and was also a bad season in general for Arkansas, as he finished with just over 200 yards and 2 touchdowns and a measly 3.4 yards per carry. He decided to enter the transfer portal and would make his way over to Shane Beamer in Columbia. He ended up also having a great season and would run for 881 yards and 11 total touchdowns. He also had 27 catches out of the backfield, and this makes him a really solid weapon for the 2025 NFL Draft. I'd say he'll probably be a 3rd, 4th, or 5th round pick, and he definitely lived up to being the number 4 transfer running back in the portal and was a big get for the Gamecocks. At number 3, we have a familiar name in the college football world, and that is Trevor Etienne. Obviously, he was the younger brother to the insanely talented Travis Etienne, and this guy ended up being a 3-star recruit out of Jennings High School. Honestly, I thought he'd be a little bit more highly regarded in the recruiting scene. I guess it just depended on the site, but he put up huge numbers while he was there, and eventually decided to go to Florida instead of Clemson. Etienne ended up having a solid freshman year back in 2022, as while he was with the Gators, he ran for 719 yards and 6 touchdowns. He followed that up in 2023 with 753 more yards, and this time increased his number to 8 touchdowns. looking for a better opportunity and maybe a better system to get into the NFL, he would transfer to Georgia, and after they lost their top 2 running backs, he would be the guy to replace him. This past season, Etienne ran for 609 yards and 9 total touchdowns, which was the best of his career, but he was sort of on and off as he had some issues off the field and just wasn't all that consistent. Still though, he shows a ton of flash and has plenty of potential, and will likely be drafted probably day 2 of this year's NFL draft. I'm excited to watch him, and he's going to get his own full feature as well. I wouldn't say he didn't live up to the hype coming out of the portal, but I do think we could have expected a little bit more. One of my favorite players from the 2024 transfer portal was running back Damien Martinez. This guy had a very unique story, as coming out of high school, he was listed as the number 35 overall running back, and he actually ended up going to Louisville High School in Texas. As they always say, a Texas 3-star is in reality a 4-star, as he ended up putting up crazy numbers in his senior season, rushing for 1,712 yards with 26 touchdowns. He's also a track star. But as I said, he didn't get that big of a sheet of offers, as he was listed as the number 48 back in the country, and he would decide to go to Oregon State. Martinez ultimately blew up pretty early on while he was at Oregon State, rushing for 982 yards and 7 touchdowns as a freshman. He followed that up in 2023, being near the top of the Pac-12 with 1,185 yards and 9 touchdowns. This guy was one of the best backs in Oregon history already, and decided to enter the portal, probably so he could play on a bigger stage, get more money, and go off to the league. Also, Oregon State had been relegated pretty much. He decided to transfer to Miami alongside Cam Ward and Xavier Restrepo, and Martinez got off to a little bit of a slow start, it felt like, but ultimately he fixed it. He rushed the ball 159 times for 1,002 yards and 10 touchdowns. For me, a good running back needs to go for over 1,000 yards and double-digit touchdowns, and that's exactly what he did. Maybe some thought Martinez should have been a little bit bigger, but I definitely think he lived up to the hype coming out of the portal, and was a gem for the Canes. And at number 1, we had Quinshon Judkins. He was a ginormous name coming out of Ole Miss, and many were shocked that he even decided to leave the Rebels in the first place, but going back in time, he went under the radar. While he was at Pike Road High School, coaches were not exactly lining up to offer him. Despite running for 1,500 yards as both a junior and a senior, and having nearly 67 career touchdowns, Judkins was listed as a 3-star recruit and the number 53 back in the country. He made a bunch of people pay early on though, as he ended up being better than Zach Evans, running for 1,567 yards and 16 touchdowns as a true freshman in the SEC. This was huge. In 2023, Judkins once again put up big numbers, rushing for 1,200 yards and 15 touchdowns. He proved that nobody could stop him in the SEC, so for his final season, he decided to transfer over to Ohio State. I don't know if it was money, system, or college football playoff aspiration related, but he ended up making the right move, I guess. He didn't get as beaten up because he played alongside another big-time name in Travion Henderson, and he still managed to run for over 1,000 yards and 14 touchdowns. He got less carries, but he stayed healthy, and he also won a national championship out of it. Good for Judkins, and he is definitely going to be a guy who I think sticks around the NFL for a couple of years. So yeah, today we talked about the top 10 running backs from the portal, but I do want to take a quick look at some of the guys outside of the top 10, as there was also Penny Boone, who went from Toledo to Louisville, Kadarius Callaway, who went from Old Dominion to Cal, Rayleigh Brown, who went from USC to ASU, Dante Dowdle, who went to Nebraska from Oregon, and Trip Trainum went from Ohio State to Kentucky. None of those 5 guys did anything, and honestly, you have to go all the way to the 21st overall transfer in Marcus Carroll, who went from Georgia State to Mizzou, for a guy who really made much of an impact. But yeah, it was definitely interesting to me, and what did you guys think? Who is the best running back from this list and who is the worst? And what year and position group should I do this video for next? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you can support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out my other videos on the end screen, including my video about what happened to the top 10 receivers from the 2024 portal. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.